The Pluto in Aquarius paradigm is no longer brand spanking new. On December 5th of this year, 2025, the planet Pluto will enter the second degree of Aquarius for the final time. Pluto will never go back to the second degree of Aquarius. This means that the Pluto in Aquarius paradigm is no longer brand spanking new. We no longer have the right to say we don't know what's going on with Pluto in Aquarius, because I think we really do. Pluto rules over generations of people, okay? So, for example, Pluto in Scorpio rules over the millennial generation, and Pluto in the sign of Sagittarius rules over the Gen Z generation, okay? So we're talking about really broad swaths of time. Pluto doesn't move uniformly, but we can approximate that Pluto will move 7/10 of a degree per year while it is in the sign of Aquarius. The reality is much more complicated than that because Pluto moves in a direct motion and then it moves in a retrograde motion. So you end up getting several passes over the same degree. Pluto first entered Aquarius in March of 2023. Incidentally, the same month is when the planet Saturn entered a new sign as well, which was Pisces. And at the time of recording this video, Saturn has just moved direct for the final time in the sign of Pisces and is in its final few months. So if you can consider what's been going on for almost the last 2.5 years, almost 3 years, you're going to get a sense of the huge shift that we've just come over. And I want to encourage you to think about specifically what was happening on March 24th of 2023. I ask because I personally remember the exact moment that Pluto moved into Aquarius on this day, March 24th of 2023, at the exact moment that Pluto entered Aquarius, literally to the minute. I received an unexpected text from someone who's been one of the biggest characters of my life, deeply important to me, deeply important to my soul. And it's something I still haven't sorted out, to be very honest. I knew in that moment, because of the alignment to Pluto, that this was something much larger than me playing out. And this is someone who, in the last 3 years, Saturn moving through Pisces and Pluto finding itself firmly in Aquarius, I'm no longer really talking to this person. And I still dream about them, though. And they acted in my life as this shiny orb that I really couldn't move my mind away from. But I always knew that something was very off in my own mind and my own perspective about the relationship and about the situation. I bring this up as an example because that's exactly what was going on. Something was off in my mind and it was totally destroying me. That's Pluto in Aquarius, your mind destroying you, essentially. There's many ways to interpret it, but I'm wanting to be very concrete and literal here. Before I go further into the shiny orb of destruction in our mind that I am correlating to Pluto in Aquarius, I also want to shout out this website, which is not sponsored, but I always return to this website when I want to do precise Pluto interpretations because this amazing person has lined up every degree entrance to what date it happens. And because Pluto moves so slowly, tracking degrees like this is actually incredibly relevant because Pluto will stay at a degree for very long. Here's what I've gathered in the 2 years and 2 degrees that we have had our complete experience with in Pluto, surviving the death of your own perspective. Pluto isn't just about death, it is about moving beyond death. It's about rising from death. It's about moving beyond impermanence. It is about unalterable change and connection to your undying presence. Pluto itself, correlating to the algorithm, to groups, to consciousness, also correlates to astrology. And that's really the other big part of this video that I want to talk about and open up. My question to you is, how will you and how do you see the collective using astrology moving forward as Pluto moves through Aquarius, because the truth is, over the next 20 years, everyone's perspectives are going to die and be reborn. In much the same way as we saw institutions fall and have to be reborn throughout the transit of Pluto through Capricorn, now we will see the same thing happen to our very minds. And Aquarius is a little bit more about the detached perspective that we have. It's a little bit impersonal, and it is also the place where we find our belonging. So it has this dual function. I know that the relationship that I mentioned was connecting me to larger ideas and larger groups. And so the change that happened in this relationship also significantly changed the way that I was able to show up in a group or into groups in general. This is at least how it showed up in my interpretation of my life and how I've been tracking it to astrology. So I go back. How will you and how will the collective use astrology, and how will we all change the way we're using astrology? Because Aquarius will be changed. Astrology is being changed. And if you follow my channel for any amount of time so far, you've seen me talk about how I simultaneously hate and love astrology because I find it to be enormously limiting, while also being the exact path that will never be wrong. um, and so I am very early on in my unwinding of this, but I think it is true for each and every one of us in some area of our lives, and how we are watching, how we are witness to our own mind dying off so that it can be reborn. I also think this applies to traditions and to history. Traditions and history are not what we think they are anymore, because our very location within these collective stories, which again is our perspective, is no longer what we think it is. So when we change how we see the world, our history also has to change, and our traditions also have to change. This is Aquarius 101, right? It's the rebel. It breaks the Saturnian structure. So one more hunch I have here is that as every section of society finds themselves reflecting the changes of Pluto and Aquarius, I actually think more and more astrology is going to reach more and more people, because the large swaths of people who hold consensus beliefs, their beliefs are also going to be killed off and replaced by higher intelligence, which can be AI, but it also can be astrology. But then my question becomes, what about those of us who are already using astrology? Maybe people like me who have been using it and studying it for years, people way older than me who have built entire lives and careers off of astrology. My hunch also, people who have spent many lifetimes with the logic of astrology, with the algorithm of astrology, teaching, embodying these symbols and these truths. What about these people? And that's kind of where I find myself. My hunch is that your soul, you, are not limited to your astrological chart and your astrological interpretations, and the new quote unquote frontier that Aquarius and Pluto and Aquarius not only promises but demands will rip us through is one that reflects that sentiment, that we are not limited by our charts. So that's what I am going to spend the next 20 years figuring out how to talk about. And that's what I'm going to also spend the next 20 years allowing to be changed from within myself and from within my consciousness. And so I wanted to be very clear about that and invite you to tell me what you think. And I mean that very sincerely. I'm offering free one-on-one, just 15-minute chats. These are not readings. These are just kind of get to know you sessions. I want to hear about who you are and how you use astrology and what you think of the changing times that we are in, because one thing that's become very clear to me is that Pluto is not leaving Aquarius for 20 years. I think often about how it will enter Pisces in 20 years. I think about that with a lot of fondness, but to stay present, I think about how we are just at the beginning, but further along than we might think within a process which will completely destroy our current intellectual paradigm, our current intellectual perspective, and our spiritual perspective, the tools that we use, the algorithms that we use, which is completely an astrology thing. So I want to hear what you think. I want to hear how you use astrology. I want to hear how you want to use astrology. I want to hear what your pain points with using astrology are. Because the truth is, I don't have the answer. This is something I would love to say we're co-creating together. I also think it's something that's happening through us talking about this stuff with each other and allowing it to happen, to not resist it. So this is what I think. This is the latest stage of me reconciling a lot of my philosophical quandaries with the idea of fate and free will. So thank you so much for listening. Let me know what you think. And until the next time, bye for now.